It gives me a real good pleasure to welcome Sam Webber to give a talk today. His son Sonny was LPA for years. He's been a big advocate of our programme, and likewise we've been a big supporter of the things that Sam's done. And I'd like to just give him a round of applause if you could, guys.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Del for inviting me here to talk. Outside of work, I take part in extreme fundraising expeditions. These have taken me to some great places around the world. So I didn't start off with a plan. These have just kind of evolved. So I've climbed some of the highest mountains in the world, like Kilimanjaro, which Del I know has done, but also climbing the highest mountain in the southern and western hemisphere, a mountain called Aconcagua, also known as the Mountain of Death. I've spent 17 days doing a military-grade jungle survival course in the Amazon with an Amerindian tribe and a former SAS officer. And then more recently, the story I'm going to share with you today is my story of how we took part in rowing 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean. And the reason why it's relevant for you guys today, you probably don't know this because you're relatively young in your life journey, but resilience is a word that often people use, and they use it and they misuse it sometimes. And resilience actually happens in all of our lives. Leadership. You don't have to be a captain in a football team to be a leader. We're actually all leaders. And mindset, winning the mind battle, is a huge and powerful tool. And hopefully, by the end of today, I'll share with you some stories of challenges that we had during the Atlantic row, but also how that might relate to your lives, in your football journeys, or just in your life journeys. It's 3:30 in the morning. I'm in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's pitch black. Waves 25 to 30 foot high. All of a sudden, I noticed a huge wave jump up behind the back of the boat. I knew it was a bad one because the more time you spend in the sea, you start to develop a sixth sense, and this just didn't feel right. And as the wave crashed over the boat, I let go of the oars, I grabbed hold of the handrails, and I braced myself for impact. The wave smashed against the boat, and the boat moved violently to one side. And the noise and the sound of the rushing water towards us was both terrifying and deafening. And then, silence. I heard a noise that will stay with me for the rest of my life. It was a glug, 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 glug. And instantly, I knew we were in a capsize. We were in a full 360-degree capsize in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. When the boat eventually flipped up the other side, I was no longer in the relative safety of the boat. I'd actually been thrown overboard. So now I'm hanging perilously to the side of the boat with over 8.5 kilometres of ocean below my feet. To say that I was scared is an understatement. I don't think you could possibly comprehend. These waves were still crashing over us, and I'm hanging on the side of the boat. Now, I'm not a professional footballer. I'm not a professional athlete, but I've spent my life working in businesses. But outside of that, as I've alluded to, I've done some amazing things, and they've taken me all over the world, and they've allowed me to raise over £300,000 for various local charities and good causes. But here's the important bit. Rowing the Atlantic, it was nothing about the row. It wasn't even about the fitness, the strength. It wasn't even about the mental toughness on the day. The journey actually started 2.5 years before I even got the boat. Just to give you an idea, to cross the Atlantic, it costs about £140,000 just to get to the start line. So even the fundraising is a monumental challenge. And every single day there was a voice in my head that just said, are you good enough? Are you strong enough? What happens if you let your team down? And the truth is, as I stand here today, that voice never goes away. Back to the ocean. We managed to flip the boat over the other side, and that's when my life changed forever, because I thought I was going to die. So I actually said goodbye to my wife and my children in my head. I'd made peace with the fact that I wasn't going to make it. And that's when everything changed. That's when despair set in. And when you're 500 miles in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with still 2,700 miles to go, That isn't the place where you need doubt to set in. If you think the capsize was bad enough, what happened in the next 24 hours would actually sink us to an even lower. We'd lost equipment. Somebody had left the cabin door open as we capsized. We lost systems. I've even got a carbon fibre oar. These are virtually indestructible. We snapped 4. We snapped our dagger board. We lost nearly all of our steering mechanisms. And the only way to steer the next 2,700 miles was tying 2 pieces of rope to a rudder and then steering with our hands. We hadn't trained to do that. We just improvised. This is when forming a team becomes automatically important. We hadn't trained for this. We hadn't planned for it. We just had to respond. When you're exhausted, when you're scared, when everything feels like it's falling apart, that's when your mindset is tested. Not when things are going well, not when the sun is shining, not when you're winning a football match, but when everything turns against you. And that can be any single day, and every single one of you can have one of those days. But maybe you're not in the middle of the Atlantic, but maybe in your own way, whether it's your football, your training, whether you think, actually, do you know what, I don't want to train today. You'll have those moments when you feel like everything's behind you, and that's when doubt creeps in. And in that moment, you have a choice. Out there in the Atlantic, these massive challenges became all too surmountable. We had 2,700 miles to go. It was too big a challenge. It was too forbidding. So what we did is we broke the challenge down into small bits. We can control the controllables. We couldn't control Mother Nature. We couldn't control the ocean or the waves, but we could control how we respond. And this is really important to every single one of you here today. It's about how we responded, our attitude, our effort, and our mindset. And that's exactly the same for you. You can't control what happens in a football match. And guess what? You can't control what the referee does, or the opposition, or even sometimes the result. But you can control how you respond and how you react. If you go a goal down, if you're tired, if things aren't going your way, if all those things that you practiced in training aren't coming off on the football field, what you do next, that's what defines you. It took 52 days, 20 hours and 43 minutes to get across the Atlantic. We lived on a daily routine. If you can imagine, for nearly 2 months, we were rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whatever the weather. Whether we were frightened, whether there was 20-foot waves outside, most of the time I had 20 blisters on each hand. With the salt rubbing into it, it burnt. Every time I got out of that boat and got into that rowing position, my body ached. It was on fire the whole time. But what got me through was the rest of the team. I'd made a commitment 2 years earlier that whatever I felt, it's not about me today, it's about the team and how can I help them. So if you imagine over and over again facing total exhaustion, I'm talking about exhaustion like you never have felt before. And those 3,000 miles, we would have been broken. We focused on the next 2 hours. What can we achieve in the next 2 hours? How can I make my teammate's life a bit better? Perhaps he's feeling down, so I'll make him a hot drink. If he's not eating his food, because we burnt somewhere in the region of about 5,000 to 6,000 calories per day. We tried to consume 3,000 to 4,000, so we're on calorie deficit the whole time. But I could see my teammates if they were having a bad day, if they weren't eating enough calories, and it was my responsibility to make sure that they did, because we were a team. And that's what you need to think about when you're on that pitch. When you've got all of your friends on that pitch, and maybe you're having a bad day, or maybe they're having a bad day, how you react to that is all important, and that comes into team dynamics. You've seen it time and time again on a football pitch. Someone's down 3-2 at half time. Now you can choose at half time how you respond, and some of those teams go on to win. What's changed? They were 3-2 down before the half time. It was the team talk. It was the reuniting, the reminding of all the training you've done, all those different drills that you did every single week. Sometimes you just have to remind yourselves of your why. Why are you here today? Why do you want to start playing football? Where do you see your journey? It's really important that you focus on that. So that's exactly what we did. So even if the game's too big for you, break it down into bite sizes. Forget about the second half. What are you going to do from kickoff? What are you going to do if you're 1-0 down after 5 minutes? What are you going to do as a team? Are you going to do that extra run? Instead of letting that ball go off for a corner, you're going to make it go for a throw-in. That could be the difference between another team scoring a goal. Making that extra tackle when you don't want to. Doing that extra sprint. Just that one bit of quality that can change a game on its head. And that's how you build on something. We also learnt what a real team looks like. Some days when you're not feeling strong, but you can lift everybody else. You do have dark days and you're allowed to have that. So you might not be feeling it, but you might be able to help one of your teammates. It's a really powerful thing. Team dynamics is not just a phrase or a sentence. It's a true connection with your team. Supporting them. So when one person drops their standards, rather than having a go at them, you support them. You give them that word of encouragement. They haven't deliberately missed that tackle. It was just what happened at that moment in time. And when one person raises their standards, I promise you it's infectious. It sweeps across the team. The whole dynamic changes. I've seen football teams in a pre-game warm-up. I know they're going to lose because you can just see it. And that's happened. You can tell. And that's when something becomes really clear. You don't wait to be ready. You don't wait to feel strong. You act first, and the feeling follows. There were so many days on that boat. There were so many days in the 2 years worth of training that I didn't want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I didn't want to go to that gym when it was pouring down with rain. And when I'd get to that gym, it was too easy not to do a proper training routine. But then I thought about my team. It wasn't about me today. It was about, if I don't do this training today, I might let my team down when we're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And I didn't want that responsibility. So it's in those moments that matter the most. That's where resilience is built. Resilience just doesn't happen. It's built in your age now. It's built with you going out there and training and putting every single effort in that training session. Not just for you, but for your team. And but it's the sessions when you don't feel like training. You hear about top athletes all the time and how they train. Even though they're the best of the best, golfers that miss a shot, guess what they do after the tournament? They go back to that shot and they keep practicing and practicing until they get it right. People like Dennis Bergkamp and Thierry Henry and all these famous stars like Messi, when they miss something on a pitch or in training, they don't just pack their bags and go home. They go back on the training ground for hours and hours and hours because they want to perfect it. They know they've let themselves down. And that's what it is. Repeat again and again until they get it right. And that's the difference. That's the small margins between success and failure. For me, success and failure out in the Atlantic was the difference between life and death. And we had many, many more challenges. But despite everything, there were moments out there in the Atlantic that were magical. And you have to remember, sometimes with all this training and all this effort, you do have magical moments. It could be winning a football match. It could be perfecting that free kick. For us, we saw things like you won't see ever in any town or city. In the middle of the Atlantic, there's zero light pollution. So when you turn your cabin light off at night, you can see the Milky Way. That's something you can't see on land. We could see meteors bouncing off the atmosphere. Again, something else I never dreamt when I was in the middle of the Atlantic I would capture. There was a moment when we saw some wildlife. So when you row across the Atlantic, you kind of want to see a shark or you want to see a whale, but you kind of don't because just in case it wants to eat you. But we saw, I was finishing off my chicken fried rice, 6 o'clock one evening. And literally, just about as far as you're sitting away, this massive dorsal fin came up. And I knew it wasn't a shark. I was petrified but caught in the moment. And then the head of a great killer whale popped up next to it. So now there's 2 killer whales right next to us, 1,500 miles in the middle of the Atlantic. And it opened its mouth and it was staring right in my eyes. So I screamed at one of my crewmates, get a camera. Guy got out the cabin and he noticed 2 more killer whales circling our boat. Now there's nothing we can do. This is Mother Nature in her rawest, and if they wanted to eat us, they could have easily eaten us. There was nothing we could do. But that moment was magical, and as quickly as they came above the water, they just sank down and swam off. They were just being inquisitive, but it reminded us how insignificant we can be, a little rowing boat in the middle of the Atlantic. There was another time when I came on the oars early in the morning and I felt something crashing underneath. I looked over the side, there was another black and white shadow. And I thought, oh my God, they've come back. This time they're hungry. So I got the GoPro, I stuck it in the water, I checked the GoPro to make sure the battery was working, and I noticed a 25 or 30 foot sperm whale under the water. I would never have known it was there. It could have been there for a day, could have been there for 2. And it was its calf or its baby that was under our boat, just shielding itself. These were the magical moments. And you get these moments when you're playing football, when you've won a game that you didn't think you were going to win. Sometimes when you beat a team 4 or 5-0, you win, but it's not enjoyable. But when you're losing against a team, and it could be your fierce rivals, and you go on to win, that's what success feels like. In those 52 days, 20 hours and 43 minutes, we finally reached Antigua. We were completely broken, mentally, physically, exhaustion where we were hallucinating. We were still rowing, but we were hallucinating. So here's my message to you. Maybe you're not in a rowboat. Maybe you're in a little bit of a storm of your own. Maybe things aren't going your way. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're doubting yourself. Maybe you feel that you're falling behind, but at some point, every one of you will face those moments. Moments when you feel like giving up, but moments like you feel like you're capsizing. But in those moments, you have a choice. You can decide to give up, or you can decide to fight back.